Welcome to Myco Minute, conversations about collaboration brought to you by the capacity creators at Myco Consulting LLC, where we help higher ed, nonprofit, and philanthropic leaders advance the initiatives they care about most.
I'm delighted to welcome today Tessa Hicks Peterson, who's both a friend and a colleague from my days at the Claremont Colleges. Most importantly for today's conversation, Tessa is the director of the Office of Consortial Academic Collaboration. She's also the assistant vice president of community engagement at Pitzer College and the faculty director of critical action and is it social advocacy? Did I get that right? And associate professor of urban studies. So she's got quite a resume, and you'll see amazing connections between her work at OCAC and all of these different arenas. So first of all, Tessa, welcome. So glad that you're able to join me today.
Thanks so much, Deb. I love being here with you.
It's good to see you, just on a friend level, like, hey, I get to see Tessa today. So I thought maybe first we should talk about the Claremont Colleges and some of the unique properties of them, and then this entity that exists of the Claremont Colleges Services, so TCCS, and then tell us about OCAC. So kind of give us that funnel of entities so we understand where OCAC fits in.
All right. So the Claremont Colleges Consortium are a consortium of 7 colleges, 5 undergraduate colleges and 2 graduate colleges. And they come together in many ways, physically and academically and logistically. They share a very small space within the city of Claremont, and they are literally right next door to each other. One campus almost bleeds right into the next. And they have been collaborating on a variety of levels in terms of students can take classes at any of the colleges, regardless of where they're enrolled. Students can enjoy the dining halls of any other colleges. So there's a cross-pollination between the students and, of course, the faculty. They have their own collaborations and the services of the colleges. So then we have the Claremont Colleges services, which is really overseeing all the logistical collaborations and administrative collaborations, from payroll of employees to shared libraries, to shared sports teams, to all kinds of shared entities between and across the colleges. And so that's a critically important focal point for collaboration, but it's not concentrated on the academic side of things. So that's where the Office for Consortial Academic Collaboration was born. And huge shout out to Deb Mashek, who is the founding director of that office. And, it really came about after years of doing some work around collaboration, really intentionally through a Teagle grant, where Deb helped to spawn many sub-grantees throughout the colleges who are doing academic curricular coherence and all kinds of different collaborations between a variety of different fields and mostly faculty members, but also administrators and students. In any case, that proved to be so important and fruitful, but also demonstrating that there needed to be, a force behind the fostering of such collaborations, because everyone is so busy, and we're also, of course, in our silos, not only of our own schools, but our own departments, and to break the silos and to really not only collaborate, but do so in strategic and meaningful and effective ways. And so one of the greatest gifts that you left me with, Deb, was this wonderful research you did on the ingredients for successful collaboration and social change, and how do we really make our work together effective and also hopefully enjoyable, and a way that we can make it sustainable. And so there's all that research that you and others have done about what makes a good collaboration. So building on that foundation of knowledge and practice, then we're able, through the Office of Consortial Academic Collaborations, really help foster and nurture collaborations. The interesting thing, of course, is that we're not trying to create a whole bunch of new programs and nest them as an entity on a campus. We're really behind the scenes to help build some scaffolding and facilitation so that we have the structures and protocol and foundations in place for collaborations to continue into the future. And often and hopefully utilizing existing resources, because of course the last thing that the deans and the provosts and presidents of the colleges want is like, hey, we've got all these new great collaborations, we just got 10 new grants, and then we hope that you'll give us the money when the grant runs out, which is, of course, a blessing and a curse. So we're really trying to be strategic how we create collaborations with all the knowledge and resources that already exist, And of course, sometimes we build beyond that and we do need additional support, but we're really mindful about the ways that we can be sustainable and strategic in that work. And I'm loving it. And the biggest gift you gave me was to help hire me to follow you as your predecessor in this work. And I think it's deeply inspiring and meaningful work.
Well, thank you for the nice words. And it's, you know, I think back to, I've been so lucky to have so many enriching professional experiences, and getting to be involved in figuring out how to nurture and sustain collaborations at the Claremonts was certainly a highlight of my career. So I'm so excited to hear what y'all been up to. I do have two general follow-up questions on things that you just mentioned. One is this idea of nesting, and that you're careful not to, it's weird because you're kind of taking things under your wing, but not putting them in your nest, if that, if that makes sense. But then also this idea of institutionalizing the work so that it's not just grant funded and then either withers on the vine or creates, I can imagine situations where it can create kind of angst around, wait, we just created this amazing thing and you don't love us enough to sustain it, even though obviously budgets are not infinite, so choices would need to be made. So if you can speak a little bit more to what you mean by the nesting piece, but then also how to make it sustainable from a funding direction.
Yeah, I think probably the best way to do that would be to tell stories of the actual initiatives that we're working on, where that plays out. So if that's okay, I'll just
absolutely, let's do it. Yeah.
Right, so I'm going to introduce a couple of the initiatives that we're working on and then talk about that process. So of course, one of the founding initiatives is called the Justice Education Initiative. And I think what's really important about the initiatives and the collaborations so that they become sustainable is that we're pulling on interests that already exist. So in that case, there were already over 40 faculty members from across the 7 colleges who were interested in doing work related to the criminal justice system and education inside of it, about it, outside of it, against it, all kinds of ways of being involved. And so, you know, really pulling on the people who were already interested. And that came about before OCAC began with the TEGO grant, and when myself and another faculty member worked on bringing faculty together. Is anyone doing this? Who cares? Would we like to work together? And flocks of people came. And
I remember that. Yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh, now we need a listserv to organize the communication. Exactly. Where it was, I think everybody was a little bit surprised at the volume of people who were involved. Yeah.
And we kind of all knew a little bit about other people doing, but just literally one email out and we got 40 responses right away. And then all these other people came and showed up. And, you know, it's for a small school, it's a big deal to get so many folks in the room who are like, yes, I want to do this too. What can we do together? So it began like that, which I think is important, because if you don't have that baseline interest, the grassroots from the bottom up, that would make it harder to keep that interest over time. So one thing that we really did is really work to cultivate, what is our vision for this, right? Why would it be more spectacular to do this together than doing it alone? What can we do? Which is always, Deb, what you would always talk about, like, it's more stellar what we can do together, but how and why and for what purpose? And we really got into the weeds and took some time to really think about our vision for the work. And then, you know, you probably recall these beautiful spreadsheets, which translate the vision into goals. And we have short-term, mid-term, long-term goals. And then how do they actually roll out, and who's going to oversee them, and what's our timeline, and what's our resources, and what already exists, and what do we not know, and who should be in the room, and really like thinking through all of that. And as we went through that process, we really came up with the ideas of exactly what we wanted. Well, at the same time, because one of our schools in particular, Pitzer, had been doing this work for 20 years, Mellon Foundation expressed interest to Pitzer and said, you know, we're getting more and more interested in criminal justice and justice education work and prison education. Send us a proposal. And Pitzer, luckily, was in the right mindset of the OCAC, Office for Consortial Academic Collaboration mindset, to say, hey, let's not just do this as a Pitzer thing. Let's turn this into a 7 Claremont Colleges thing. It turned out to be 5 Claremont Colleges because Mellon wasn't funding graduate schools for that particular thing. So we got representatives from the 5 colleges to come together. And I think, Deb, you recall this is like, it was really important to have the higher ups, the deans and provosts, nominate faculty or associate deans or whomever to sit and be part of this working group, right? So it was like, we had the institutional support saying, yes, this is important. And it was signed off, as you probably recall, from the dean and president level. We are going to do this as everyone in. Everyone said, yes, seems like a good idea.
I just want to highlight something you're saying right there. So there's this communal bubbling up where there's all this interest there. And yeah, and this interest and endorsement and championing from the top too. So it's the perfect set of ingredients for what happens next.
And I do think it was critical because it was one or two representatives from each of the colleges, and we had different people who had different roles. We had someone from an advancement office for grants. We had someone from the registrar's office. We had someone from our intercollegiate community engagement office. You know, we had different folks, and then faculty who'd been doing this work for a while, who brought different strengths, points of views, and understanding about the resources and procedures and all the other stuff, the infrastructure we need to do something. So those are a lot of key ingredients there. And then we really were, after we'd hashed out what we wanted to do, and then this Mellon grant came, and we said, well, let's just turn our vision and our goals into a grant application. And we worked with the Pitzer Advancement folks and sort of collaboratively worked on this grant proposal and put everything but the kitchen sink into it. I mean, we want to teach classes inside, but not only that, but we want to propel this model of inside out prison exchange, where you bring a set of students from your own campus and you go inside the prison and meet with college students who are incarcerated there, and you create a class, and everyone takes the class together that just happens to be at the prison instead of the college campus classroom, and they all get the same credit and they all do the same reading and writing, and it creates this wonderful breaking down of barriers around all kinds of issues and divides. But also just doing, like, as a faculty member, I'm just taking my regular class, but I'm just bringing it inside, and I'm just allowing my number of students. We work at a small private liberal arts college. We usually have 12 students in the class. I'm doubling it to 24, with half of them being incarcerated. And it's a beautiful model. And we just were able then, with the Mellon funding, helped a little. We got the Mellon grant, I should say. And that helped to bolster some of what we could do, right? So then we could pay for trainings for faculty to get trained in this. This particular model requires a 7-day intensive training. Of course, you're teaching in a prison, and you want to do it in a very critical pedagogy, humanist approach. And that training allowed us to then get all these faculty trained. I think we have 22 faculty across the 7 colleges who are trained to teach these classes. And that lives on forever, right? So when the Mellon grant goes away, we still have these faculty. They're already trained. They're already teaching their classes. It's not an overload. It's not an extra cost. So we're consciously trying to feel like, how can we use the resources of a grant, which is great. We got a $1.1 million Mellon grant, fabulous. But we also know in 5 years that's going to sunset, and this work cannot, because we just don't want to see that happen again. And so the thing that so we worked on a lot of levels, and the initiative was very multifaceted, teaching classes inside the prison, then thinking about creating a major and a minor focus on justice education on our campuses. We've actually blossomed to the point, and this sort of happened organically through our relationships and the work, to create a bachelor's program on the inside, so that the folks who are incarcerated on the inside can get a bachelor's from our, sort of elite private institution before they even get out. And that's doing it in the inside out model, where we have our students from our campuses and those students inside learning together, is the first in the nation to have a bachelor's. So we have this huge thing that's gotten inordinate amount of press and attention, because it's like the first time it's ever happened.
It's transformative. I mean, for all the students. Yeah.
And we have a think tank inside, which is a group of students who are incarcerated, who've taken our classes, who help in the co-governance to decide, what do we want to do with this partnership together? So they get to have a seat at the table in deciding it. And they said from day one, we want a BA. We can only get up to an AA in prison. And some of them had like 10 AAs. I mean, they're just like hungry for knowledge. And of course, we know that education reduces recidivism and all kinds of things. And of course, the humanizing experience when our students come together with these. So the work to create a BA wouldn't have been possible because of bureaucracy of dealing with the prison and universities and all the hoops you have to go through to make things happen, if we didn't have this strong foundation of folks really dedicated, really doing the work, doing those collaborations, building those partnerships. So now we have the first BA in the nation through that.
Congratulations. That's so amazing.
Classes. Thank you. Tons of classes being taught both inside and outside. And right now we're working on really developing our own curricular program at our 5 across the colleges for justice education major and minor. So what we've done through OCAC is begin to pull back our involvement, right? So beginning, we thought a year ago, how can we sunset our support because this is going so well. And of course, through the grant, what we were able to get is to hire a manager of the whole initiative from the grant's point of view. So that really has enabled someone else to take on the role that I was doing for so long, which is calling the meetings, making an agenda, making sure we're staying on our goal track, making sure we're moving ahead on all the different pieces, evaluation, all these different components, right? And now there is someone in that position who can do that. So we have pulled back our support. But what's more important, because at some point the grant will run out, and unless the colleges come together to keep that person on with an ongoing salary, we have to have the backup plan for sustainability, because we're not nesting it through OCAC, and eventually the grant will end. So we have created these learning community coordinators, which are key faculty members from each college who get together and meet regularly to continue the collaboration work. And they continue to make sure that the classes are being taught inside, that they're building the major and minor on the outside, that we're doing collaborative events and all kinds of stuff. So we have these key people who are there, and we have a lot of other pieces in place that we've done to make sure to continue on.
So, I mean, what really, so many pieces are elevating for me, but I have this vision of OCAC holding the container for this work to take place, making sure the right people are there, facilitating the process. But now there's this very nurturing baton pass of, okay, the autonomy is go fly, let us know if you need anything, but it's not like yours that you own, or that the funding is coming from OCAC. It's just this very facilitative, nurturing sort of process. It's really beautiful.
And honestly, there's not a lot of funding from OCAC, period. I mean, we host a retreat or a big event conference to get some energy and attention to it once a year. It pays for a small stipend and a release for my courses for me to be able to do this as a part-time job. And I have a part-time administrative coordinator. You know, it's not a lot of funding from the 7 colleges. It's a pretty small amount, especially divided by 7 of them, to have the office going. And we don't need a big programmatic budget at all. So it's interesting that it's not a ton of funding, but it has to be a value that each of the colleges say, okay, let's do this. And then to pay, what I have really seen is that my job it's like being the captain, but who's like got a lot of co-captains and is not really that invested in the boat. Like, this is all of our boats. I'm not, and really like, this is because it's actually not about me at all. It's about the faculty in the room who are coming together to create the working groups to move the work along. But just having me as someone who's saying, okay, when are we going to meet? Let's get in the calendars. Here's your Zoom link. This is our agenda. These are the minutes from the last meeting. Remember, this is our vision plan. Let's go back to it. And just that amount of curated container.
Yeah, you're giving bandwidth. Yeah.
And then people just have to show up and do the work. And then they really do. And we spend some time building some relationship, checking in, connecting, talking through our values as it relates to the work, and building some relationships, right? So that they can hold things when conflict arises. And we've been working together for years, and people doing it, they're not getting paid. They're doing it. They're showing up because they're invested in the work, and they also see what happens because of the collaboration. We don't feel so isolated, disconnected, and we get to move ahead the things we are interested in with some greater support. So, and I think phenomenal.
And that's one of the cool things about the Claremont context is, for instance, I was the sole psychologist at Myco College, and the importance of finding the others who had similar interest and questions across the consortium. And part of what I see OCAC is doing is creating the spaces where those similarities can be seen and then leveraged on behalf of the interest of the faculty, certainly, but also the students. I'm curious, I believe one of your other priority projects is focused on faculty research. I'm wondering if you can speak to that initiative a bit, as something separate from maybe the teaching.
We're just getting started. So a new initiative. So I should mention that part of the ways we come up with initiatives are saying what faculty are interested in, student demand, and administrative, interests. And so this one really came after we were finishing. We just sunsetted our overseeing of the Justice Education Initiative. So I came to the deans, and our deans meet bi-weekly, 6 deans and 1 provost, I think it is, of the 7 colleges, and they oversee this office. And I said, what is something that you all feel like is something that is important to our faculty and students that we could have greater collaboration around? And we went through all kinds of ideas. Because the one that we just did through Justice Education and our other initiatives on data science are so curricularly based, they were like, let's pull back, because they also see new majors and minors are being created as a result of our initiatives, which is great, and also more. So they said, let's think about the other ways we can support collaboration on things that aren't specifically curricular. And the things that have been brought up many times by faculty is a need for better and more opportunities for mentoring, and better and more opportunities for research collaboration. So our initiative is just getting started, and we just came up with our vision statement about what that means and should look like for each, and some of our goals and what that means and look like for each. And then an interesting thing happened, which is the data science committee was working on possibly going for this big NSF grant that would provide infrastructure for computing and tech support for data science and the like. And so as we were preparing for that, you have to have, basically an audit assessment of what exists and what is needed at your site. And we've done some of that, you and I have over the years for data science, but we needed a more in-depth data on that. And so we created this survey and got approval from all of the deans and provosts that they would send it out to all of their faculty and all the campuses on what are people's research support needs, from tech to platforms to storage to security to professional development. What do they want to know? What to support? All this stuff. We got back 200 surveys, which is a lovely response rate for people in this time dealing with surveys and from a very small, set of schools. And right before we were about to send out this survey, I was talking to our new initiative working group, and they said, gosh, wouldn't it be great if you could add a question in there about what do people want around collaborative research and mentoring? And it was close enough to our survey point about research support that I said, totally, let me work.
We could totally add that item. Yeah, let's do it.
Last 2 questions on the survey were about that. But we got back all these great ideas from folks, about why and they want collaborative research, what they need. Some of them, like you, I'm the only classics professor at this entire college. Like, is there anyone else I need, and I have all this great data and I could see ways we could do things bigger, all kinds of reasons why people want to. And also just feel like, how do I find people?
Right.
It's almost like we're going to end up playing matchmaker, and do.
Totally.
So that was really exciting to get that data directly from faculty. And then I literally just got it, and we're just still making sense and coding it and making sense of the data. And then we'll see, okay, so what does this mean? And it's looking like both for the faculty mentoring and the research collaborations, we really just need a portal where people can find each other, and we can have these spaces where collaboration is fostered, because we can find out what people are doing, who they are, how to get in touch with them. And there's some infrastructure, right, for that, as well as programming and some grants and support like that. But we're just in the building phases of all that. And I think it's pretty exciting.
And I love the serendipity there of somebody had the idea that you get in the item, and there's going to be this blossoming of information about what it is people actually need. And then you're able to use that to craft OCAC's engagement in a productive way to serve the interest. I mean, it's just such a lovely model. So I'm looking at the time, and I, of course, had like a million other questions, but we don't need to get to all of them. The one that I think really want to end on is an advice one. So you've been at this now for 3 years. There are a lot of other higher ed leaders who, are interested in building collaborations, but are likewise, saying like, it's not like we got a whole huge budget for this. If you were to give just a couple pieces of advice to others for how to do this work, what would it be?
Key is, this sounds so silly, but an interest and willingness and deep appreciation for facilitating people coming together to collaborate. So I came to this work through my work in community engagement and community collaborations. And I think my facilitation, I was trained as a facilitator in community-based organizing long before I became an academic. And that has proved to be most helpful, how to facilitate.
I could totally see that. Yeah.
How to facilitate intergroup dynamics. And so I think that's just an important piece. But the other, and that also can be learned for folks like, I want to do this, but I never had training in that. Like most academics don't. Like,
right.
What are you talking about? So that's something that can be learned for sure. And I think it's really helpful in all realms of my work and teaching as well. But I also think that the direct line that we have to those in power, so the deans, provosts, and presidents being behind this, supporting it, meeting with them regularly, letting them know, and them being on board to support what we're doing. So when I do say, look, we need to send a survey out, but if it comes from us, we'll only get this many responses. But if it comes from the dean and says, we invite you to do this. So, just having our finger both on the pulse of what's happening in the community at a grassroots level and with the administrative powers that be to support this, I think is key. And the other thing that I actually was making a presentation to one of the groups that we helped incubate and foster, the Claremont Faculty Leadership Program. They asked me to make a presentation on collaboration, and I was talking about that, to expect and not shy away from conflict and see it as being generative. And they got so many people interested in part of this that I was speaking about, and they said, can you come back and do another workshop just on that? So I think humans in general and academics in particular aren't trained to handle conflict well in our society. And we have to learn to really see it as an opportunity for growth, and usually a sign that there's a relationship in need of repair, and to really seeing it as generative. And there's so much beautiful work in transformative justice movements and in restorative justice and reparations and generative conflict work out there that is so helpful to learn and think about process. So I did this other workshop and really gave some processes or how to negotiate with conflict. And I got comments back from, associate dean the next day said, I had to handle this really difficult meeting and I used what you said and it worked and it was so great, and it's like being aware that when we're coming together from different disciplines, faculty and staff, different levels of experience and knowledge and collaboration histories, and of course, 7 colleges with very unique climates and cultures and norms, there's going to be some clashes. And I think we've been able to navigate them in part by not just rushing past them and dealing with them, and also by dealing with them oftentimes behind the scenes, so to speak, just not always in the group context, not by email, picking up the phone one-to-one, really trying to, and where need be, getting support from others, and like really trying to figure out how to address it rather than just, I'm not going to sort of push my way through, like, we're just going to close that down and we're staying on our business. Like, things have to be addressed. And I think it's helped me grow as a leader to just deal with stuff head on. And then, to be honest, there is so much less conflict and challenge in this work than I anticipated. I think people are eager. I'm an optimist, but I do think humans are eager to connect. They're eager to get a sense of belonging, safety, and connection. Those are like fundamental human needs. And so when we create containers where that can happen, people usually come with their best selves and want to work together. And then when they don't, we deal with it. But I've been happily surprised by, like, wow, those ingredients for collaboration and sustainable change are like, they really work when you have the resources in place and the facilitation. It can be really lovely.
What a beautiful note to end on. So I am just so inspired by the work you're doing and heartened by the continuation of that vision of OCAC. And it's a delight to hear about your initiatives, the OCAC initiatives, and how everybody's getting involved. So please send my love to my Claremont colleagues. And Tessa, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.